Wade from Nile, ex-Nile, current narcotic wasteland. My wife was in the back watching television, and I was in the living room playing video games. The phone rang, and she answered it. I couldn't hear anything because I had the sound up. My wife came in and said she got a call from one of our neighbors who told her that another neighbor named Tom had crashed his car into the garage door of the house. The neighbor was out on the street trying to help the guy out of his car, and he was breaking out trying to start a fight. The guy was just trying to help him. Needless to say, Tom lost the fight. During the time, someone called the cops. My wife and I went outside to see what was going on. Tom had both his arms stretched out like he was on a crucifix, and he was stumbling around the front yard yelling, "I love you, Jesus!" All of a sudden, the cops rolled up, all smooth and quick, without their lights on. They got out of the car and yelled, "Get on the fucking ground, now!" And Tom just walked towards them, thinking that he was Jesus. He's lucky they didn't shoot him. Instead, they hit him with a taser. He tried to get up, and they hit him again. Once they subdued him, a pair of medics took him away. As they dragged Tom off, he waved goodbye to everyone and told them how much Jesus loved them. A little while later, his roommate, who had been out on the town on business, got back to the house. I talked to him about what happened, and he just started laughing and said, "Yeah, for the past couple of weeks, Tom hasn't been eating and hasn't been sleeping. He's just been smoking pot and taking Adderall and writing poems about clouds and talking about how he'd figured out the whole Bible." I can't say for sure the prescription drugs made him crazy, but sometimes it's not the heavier drugs that cause the most damage. And, oh, sweet, thanks. It's sticking to the, let me see. All right, we'll do it. Glenn Benton from Deicide, also from the Breaking the Law chapter. In the early days of Deicide, we really wanted to be different and extreme. So I would go to the butcher's before the show and buy all sorts of animal organs and innards and throw them into the crowd. When we were up in New York, the club owner said, "If you bring any guts or shits in, you're out of here." I had to bury a whole 30-pound beef liver in the backyard of the place we were staying. It was a shallow grave, and it attracted 1,000,000 blowflies. So when someone saw all these flies swarming around the spot, they thought there was a dead body buried there. They called the cops, and all these police cars swarmed in and dug out this beef liver. So, let me move on to another chapter. That was Breaking the Law. Now we'll go on to Trashed, which is named after a Black Sabbath album, and that's a Sabbath song. Sorry. Anyway, obviously it's kind of self-explanatory. Shit speaks for itself. So we'll go into Trashed and start with Zakk Wylde. He's also a pretty fucking funny dude if you spend any time with him. I saw a psychiatrist once, and he said, "Why do you think you drink? Is it because you're depressed, maybe?" I said, "No, Doc. Put it this way. When my immortal beloved is pleasuring my manhood and fisting my prostate to make sure I'm regular, I don't usually analyze it. I just go, man, her fist feels great up my ass." Drinking's kind of like that. Now people ask me, "Zakk, when was the last time you had a drink?" And I go, "About 8 years ago, but I'm fine. Now I just sniff glue and eat paint chips, and the results are remarkably the same. I wake up and my pants are around my ankles, and all the fellows go, 'Damn, we had a great time last night.'" From that, let's go to Jimmy Bower. From I Hate God. He's also in Superjoint Ritual, Down, and formerly of Crowbar. We were on the tour with White Zombie and Pantera, and we were in Miami. I hung out with Dimebag Darrell and Big Val, the tour manager. We all went to a couple bars, and I got fucking wasted with Dime. When we got back, we were outside of the club, banging the backs of our heads against the wall super hard. We weren't going to stop. And Big Val had to pick us up and drag us away. Another time I was playing drums with Corrosion of Conformity, and we were in Australia with Pantera on one of their last tours ever. Me and Dimebag were in the lobby drinking margaritas, getting wasted. Next thing I knew, we were dancing with these old ladies in the fucking lobby. And I'm looking over at him with this expression that says, dude, what the fuck? And he goes, roll with it, son. Not 10 minutes later, we were cursing these old ladies out. I have no idea what happened that got us upset, but no more than 5 minutes after that, I fell down and cut my hand open on a margarita glass and needed a bunch of stitches. And after that night in Australia, we both woke up in the same bed together in the same room. I woke up and said, dude, what the fuck happened, bro? And he went, dude, I don't know. We were just dumbfounded. Man, that dude was fun to drink with. All right, let's go to Take as Needed for Pain, which is all about all the substances that can do great harm and cause one to enjoy great experiences along the way if it doesn't kill him. So, Mike Williams from I Hate God. It's pretty well known that we've all had our little drug problems. I've missed shows. I was totally addicted, and I was dope sick because I couldn't get any drugs for whatever reason. That's all in the past. But man, there were so many different stories. And there were so many times a band was just a huge felony rolling down the highway. We were always in danger of getting pulled over with the stuff we had on us. Guys were shooting up and doing coke. There was paraphernalia and drugs and methadone and Xanax and pretty much everything you can imagine. That was all going on in the van. We knew it was terrible, but we felt like it was kind of a necessity. That's how we wanted to do it. That's how we rolled. It was a stupid idea that some young bands have. I look back and cringe at the kind of things we did. They were illegal and dangerous, and I thank somebody, knock on wood, that nothing ever happened, and I'm still here. This is David Vincent, from former Morbid Angel, current Vltmas. Vltmas, whatever the fuck that means. We were on tour in South America, and oftentimes everything is quick. But you're not on a tour bus. You have to fly every day. You fly into a city, hurry up and race to the city, hurry up and do a sound check, then you do press, and finally the shows. By the time you're done with the shows at night, and you can get to the hotel, it's 3 a.m. And there's a 6 a.m. lobby call, so everyone can assemble in the lobby and make the next flight. After several of these days, it starts taking its toll. No sleep, no time to zone out. We got to Argentina, and as soon as we got out of the plane, we're informed we had to go straight to the venue and do press and then sound check. I was like, oh, I don't care if I don't sound check today. I'm not going to sound like anything, and then if I don't get some sleep. The people at the venue said, hey, can we get you anything? I thought, well, we're in South America. So I said, yeah, man, a gram of Coke would sure be nice. Somehow or another, the word gram wasn't interpreted, and the guy came back with a big solid rock of Coke larger than a golf ball. It was very potent, being that it was from the region. So I took a little shave off that, and I was good, ready to go. We played the show, no hitches, all was good. So we get back to the hotel room. I was in the hotel room looking at this thing, and even after everybody had partaken in it, it didn't look like the rock had gotten any smaller. I said, gosh, we can't really waste this, guys. No one's ever given us this kind of a gift before. So I was like, well, we might as well see if we can put a hurtin' on this. So me and other unnamed individuals did our best to try to put a dent in this rock. We stayed up all night carving up lines, one after another. I definitely realized how high you can get, what the ceiling is. There was a point where I was bleeding down the front of my shirt, and it wasn't possible for me to get any higher. We were sitting on a plane going back home, and I was still high as fuck. But I was trying to remain as calm as I could. I had my shades on, but behind the shades, my eyes were completely bugging out. That was after 3 days of no sleep. But we were so jacked up it didn't matter. And I think that's the last time I ever did cocaine. Because when you find out what the limit is, you don't ever need to reach that limit again. And that's hard because usually you do a little bit and then you always run out and go, well, let's do a little bit more. But there is no more. So there's always a level of moderation up to that point. I had never had so much where there was this extra quantity that we literally had to throw away. All right. Let's move on to some of the funnier shit. Of course, when you have drugs and booze, you probably have puking. So the chapter Revelation Nausea is named for some pretty outrageous puke stories. And this is Max Cavalera from Soulfly, Cavalera Conspiracy, and formerly Sepultura. I once puked on Eddie Vedder. I was hanging out with the Ministry guys on the Ministry bus. We were touring with them, and Eddie came to the show in Seattle. He's friends with them, so he was hanging out on the bus. While Ministry was sitting in the back of the bus, Al and some of them were all shooting up and drinking. I had a bottle of rum. I was drinking it nonstop. I took one more chug, and everything went black. I looked to my left side, and I knew I didn't want to puke on Ministry. And Eddie Vedder was to my right. So I turned to him and threw up all over his pants and all over him. It was a whole cascade. I was so apologetic. Not long before that, my sister said, if you ever meet Eddie Vedder, I want an autograph. So right after I puked on the guy, I asked him for his autograph for my sister. I grabbed a little piece of napkin from the table, and he actually signed it. And, all right. Let's move on to Scott Ian. Scott Ian from Anthrax, SOD and the Damn Things. And he's got a pretty great story about hanging out with Lemmy, the god of indulgence, God rest his soul. I was having a great time the first time I got drunk with Lemmy. We drank whiskey all night, and the next thing I know, I was getting woken up by Megaforce Records owner Johnny Z in my bed in a hotel because we had to catch a plane to Munich the next day for the next stop on the promo tour. I was still in all my clothes, and Johnny was kicking me to wake me up. He yelled at me, and he wasn't nice about it. Get up, motherfucker, because I'm not calling the label and telling them that you fucking drank with Lemmy and now you're canceling the promo tour. You're not going to blow this shit on the first fucking day, he shouted. I sat up, and immediately waves of nausea washed through my whole body. I threw up. Then I started feeling the pain I've never experienced. It felt like a cop beat the fuck out of me with a baton. Every part of my body was in pain. I rolled over and puked on the bed. I wiped off my mouth with the back of my hand, but I was in a cold sweat, and then I felt the nauseous wave again. I couldn't stop throwing up. Johnny sat there waiting for me, pissed. I was trying to get my shit together, and finally, I got out of the hotel. We were already late for the plane, and by the time I got to Heathrow, I couldn't even walk under my own strength. Johnny was literally carrying me over his shoulder through the airport, and I was throwing up over his back. It was disgusting. I hadn't even found out what would happen, and my whole body ached. I was literally just a puddle. Somehow we make it to the plane. I went straight to the airplane bathroom and started puking again. The stewardess made me get out for takeoff, so I went back to my seat, and I sat there shaking with a barf bag on my lap. I was dry heaving and spitting out stomach acid, but there was nothing of substance left in me. By the time we got to Munich, I wasn't throwing up anymore, but I was shivering and felt feverish. I was lying in bed shaking. This didn't feel like any hangover I'd ever had. At some point I asked Johnny, dude, what happened to me last night? You were talking to Lemmy for about an hour and drinking a lot, he began. I started doing the mental math. A normal person would drink 4 drinks in that time, and a Lemmy would drink down maybe 15. Suddenly, I was beginning to understand what had happened. Johnny kept talking. The next thing we knew, you were out at the bar and running up and down the street. I followed you outside because I wanted to make sure you were okay. You started running zigzags down Waterloo Street. Your arms were waving and your head was swaying back and forth and you looked like a gorilla and you were screaming incoherently. I couldn't understand a word you were saying, and you were jumping up and diving into piles of garbage on the street, big garbage bags that were out for pickup. I was like, what? I had no memory of any of this. No wonder I fucking stank so bad. Why didn't you try to stop me? I asked. We tried to stop you, but you were pulling moves like an NFL NFL running back. Everything, evading tacklers, and then you dashed the other way and dove into another pile of trash, he said. Finally, you just lay down and passed out. Okay, I got it. Well, let's go to the record company office and do the rest of these interviews. We can't. Your pants are filled with shit, he said. I went into the bathroom, and when I dropped my pants, it was so disgusting I almost puked again. My underwear was 70% brown, and my pants were a mix of half-dried and thick, wet poop. Before I could shower, Johnny handed me a piece of paper with a lifetime management contract written on it. Fuck you, motherfucker, he said. You're gonna make me deal with this shit. This is what I want. Sign it. I took his bullshit contract to the bathroom with me, and I wiped my shit-smeared ass with it. Then I took a shower and got all cleaned up, and when I came out, I tossed a stinking contract on the table where he was sitting, and I said, "Oh, Johnny, by the way, here's that deal you wanted." That's actually the least messy way I've ever gotten out of a contract. Okay. This is Dino Cazares from Fear Factory and Divine Heresy. Also, he was in Brujeria and Assassino. We were in Kansas City with Obituary. After the show, I picked up a girl, and she gave me a blowjob in the back of the bus. Hey, that was great, I said afterwards. You know, I've got some buddies. Would you mind? Not at all. No problem, she said with a smile. We had everybody from the whole tour, the crew guys, the headlining band, the opening band, everybody lined up to get a blowjob. There were at least 10 guys. After she was done, I escorted her out of there. I said, "Hey, thank you very much. I really appreciate that." She walked a few feet, leaned up against the wall, and puked up all this cum. Gives new meaning to spit or swallow. And now that we've moved on from puke and gotten into the world of cum, I'll go into the girls chapter, which is about groupies and chicks on the road and groupies. So we'll go back to our pal King Fowley, who was kind of a sick motherfucker, but still an awesome dude. All right. King fucking Fowley. Here we go. One time, this girl came up to me after a show and started talking to me. She was like, "I want to be with you." She was a pretty girl, but for whatever reason, I wasn't in the mood to be with her. So I told her, "I will be with you if you fuck a chicken." I told her it didn't have to be a real chicken, just parts of a chicken. I figured that was that, and she'd be grossed out and take off. But she went and got Purdue chicken parts, and then she came back and took off her clothes and started shoving a raw piece of chicken in her pussy. It was a frozen, boneless chicken breast, so it was slippery, and she pushed it in and out and didn't have any problem and seemed to enjoy it. Talk about dedication. After she did that, I didn't have the heart to let her down. So I guess she got what she came for. One more? All right. Well, let's go to one of my favorites. This is a pretty crazy story. Dave Navarro, not exactly a metal dude, but definitely influenced by metal. Guitarist for Jane's Addiction and did some time in the Chili Peppers, and was no stranger to heroin and other substances. But a smart guy at the same time and tell some great stories. So, I'll go. Back in the late 80s, Jane's Addiction played Madison Square Garden. It was the biggest show of our lives. It was crazy. People were like, really? Jane's Addiction? That little weird band from LA? That no one gave a shit about? That no one gives the time of day to? That people don't know who they are and that their music sounds like and they couldn't agree on anything? Those junkies, they're playing Madison Square Garden? It was a fucking big deal because bands like us just didn't fill places like that back then. So of course, bassist Eric Avery and I needed to get good and high before the show. We took a cab to Alphabet City, which at the time was really dangerous. That's where you would score heroin or get street drugs. You had to get out of the car, you had to walk around, you had to look for somebody, and maybe he knew somebody. You'd end up getting instructions like, yeah man, go up to the 4th floor, and it's 4E and knock twice. Dudes opened the door with guns, and they'd point them at your head and ask, what do you want? That night I was standing there dressed in full stage gear like a Raggedy Ann with dreadlocks. We scored the dope and did it and nodded out for a little while. I came to and shook Eric, who was nodding out. It was 20 minutes until start time, and we were still high in Alphabet City. There were no cell phones, no computers. We couldn't find a landline. Management didn't know where we were. Jane's Addiction frontman Perry Farrell and drummer Stephen Perkins didn't know where we were. And frankly, we didn't know where the fuck we were. All we knew was that in 20 minutes, the biggest show of our lives was scheduled to start. We found a cab, raced to Madison Square Garden. Back then, we just looked like punks. We tried to get backstage. Nobody would let us in. No. You don't understand, man. We're playing here tonight. Yeah, not without a wristband you're not, said a security guard. Come on, dude. You've got to let us in. Everybody's in there waiting for us. You're holding up the show. Well, you got to go talk to the guy at the gate in the back, he said, seemingly unconcerned. So we went around and talked our way into the gate entrance. We were still fucking loaded and the circus was in town at Madison Square Garden. But when they have concerts or other events, they put all the circus shit down below. We ran around down underneath Madison Square Garden to find the stage entrance. At that point, we were already 15 minutes late, and we were still so high, and nobody knew where we were. Then we realized we were running by cages full of tigers and elephants. All the animals from the circus were down there. Our hearts were pounding. We were almost nodding out as we were running. There was blood dripping down our arms from where we shot up, and there were wild animals growling and clawing at their cages. We saw giant clawed arms swinging at us, which was terrifying. They probably smelled blood, and we really thought we were going to die. It was the most surreal thing to go from street-level gutter-hype life to being surrounded by wild animals. And at the time, we couldn't even figure out why they were there, because we didn't know there was a circus in town. We figured that out later. We wound up making the show. We were late, and I don't remember a thing about the performance. I don't think Eric does either, but we made it. So, thanks so much. Hope you enjoyed it. And I'll be selling copies in the back if you're interested, and I'd be happy to sign them. Unless you don't want the value of the book decreased, the resale, But anyway, thanks again, and bring on the bands.